Hello, my name is W.J. Sheehan. I am the author of a series of books entitled Bigfoot Terror in the Woods, Sightings and Encounters. This series is a compilation of sightings, encounters, and evidential findings pertaining to Bigfoot in North America. The series is available in both paperback and ebook formats by going to www.buybigfootbooks.com, and the link will take you where you want to go. Both now as well as going into the future, I will be reading various chapters from the series and posting them for your listening pleasure. If you have seen something, say something. I can be contacted at splinters@optonline.net. That's SPLINTERS at optonline.net. Today's reading is entitled It's Not Wood, taken from Volume 3 of the series Bigfoot Terror in the Woods, Sightings and Encounters. I hope you enjoy it. This unusual and rather game-changing story was told to me by Frank Maselli, a landscape photographer and avid hiker from the Pacific Northwest. Here is what Frank saw and heard when hiking through the lower Crabtree Meadows in July of 2017. As I told you when we first spoke, I am more or less an amateur photographer, specializing in landscape and panoramic pictures. I don't know when or how someone is touted to be a professional in my craft, but I have never applied that badge to myself. I have been at this now for well over 25 years, and many of my pictures are posted online. My wife Sandra and I were just coming off some high ground, working our way down and through Lower Crab Meadows. I had just set the tripod up with the view of the valley and trees within the meadows in the foreground, and with Mount Russell rising up in the background. Having taken a few really nice shots from this perspective, the two of us continued to hike through the crab, as we call it. As we made our way through, we had decided to work our way up to a slightly higher position on one of the wooded hilltops to our left-hand side. We had hiked up through the trees to a slightly higher elevation where the perspective through the lens had changed dramatically. Once again, I had set up the tripod to take a few more shots. The view from here was spectacular. I was standing alongside of the camera, setting up for a panoramic shot, when a loud knocking sound emanated through this valley. Sandra and I both looked at each other as if to say, "What the heck was that?" We began to scan the surrounding area in hopes of seeing whatever had made the sound. I should mention that we hadn't seen any large animals as we passed through the crab, getting to the point where we found ourselves. I was using a telephoto camera lens, and Sandra was using a pair of field glasses to scan the area around us. After a few minutes, having heard nothing more, my wife said she saw something dark pacing around in the timber on the slope to our right-hand side. I said to her, "What do you mean pacing?" She said to me that whatever she was looking at was standing on two legs and was moving back and forth in a random manner within the trees. I immediately started scanning the area in which she was looking with my telephoto, and bingo. There, before my eyes, was a large black Bigfoot on the slope. Just so you can visualize what I was seeing through the lens, the creature was about 2 inches tall in the lens at this distance. I had it in focus, but I couldn't see it or its movements with great clarity. It was pacing around exactly as my wife had said, flipping its arms left and right like a nervous man waiting for a late bus. It stayed in this one small area, pacing around for maybe 10 minutes or so. Suddenly, it stopped pacing and stood erect, facing the north with its head held high, and brought its hands up to its mouth. We once again heard a loud, resonating knock. As soon as we had heard the knocking sound, it lowered its arms and started pacing around as it had been doing before. Now, I must be upfront with you with what I'm about to say. My wife and I had seen every Bigfoot show available to mankind 10 times over. We had heard all of the tales and seen all of the people pounding on trees with logs and bats, walking through the forest. The two of us, in all of our outdoor adventures, have seen and heard nothing for ourselves up until this afternoon of which I speak. On that afternoon, I believe we settled the score once and for all, as far as wood knocks go. It's not a wood knock at all, but rather a large and loud vocalization being made by the creatures internally. Having tried it for myself, I can make a cluck or a knock sound by putting my tongue to the roof of my mouth and moving my jaw downward. There is no way for me to describe the mechanics of what I am talking about to you, but I can do it. Now, whether or not they are doing it in the same way is something which you and I have no way of knowing. But what I saw and heard was evidence enough for me. There was nothing else present in that valley with us, and the sound occurred exactly when it had elevated its head and put its hands to the sides of its mouth. The creature was evidently very tall and broad in stature. Exactly how big I cannot say because the distance was far too great, and we weren't going over there to say hello. We could most definitely make out the exceedingly long arm length, and its fur or hair was shiny and black. After about what must have been 20 or so minutes, it abruptly stopped this pacing and moved out of our sight, walking what I would say was some 300 or 400 yards. I, as a photographer, have captured some moments in time that will never be duplicated again. I have shown the same stills to many others that you have seen, and they frankly don't believe it or have little or nothing to say about them. I guess it's just part of human nature. We have the believers and the non-believers. We have those who do and those who don't. As far as Sandra and myself are concerned, we are most definitely now counted among the believers. Thank you for listening.